The night sky above New York City shimmered with an unnatural light, a cascade of emerald and crimson streaks that danced like auroras gone rogue. At first, people stopped in the streets, pointing their phones upward, murmuring in awe. But the awe turned to terror when the first ships descended, massive, obsidian structures that blotted out the stars, their surfaces etched with glowing, alien runes. The air crackled with energy, and the ground trembled as the vessels touched down. Within minutes, the city was under siege. Among the chaos, Dr. Elena Vasquez, a brilliant but weary astrophysicist, watched from her apartment window. Her dark curls framed a face etched with exhaustion, her brown eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination. She had spent years studying extraterrestrial phenomena, but this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. Her hands trembled as she clutched her laptop, the screen filled with data she had been analyzing moments before the invasion began. The patterns in the alien ship's movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic. They weren't here to destroy, they were here to conquer. Across the city, Captain Marcus Hale of the United States Marine Corps was already in motion. His broad shoulders and sharp jawline gave him the appearance of a man carved from stone, but his piercing blue eyes betrayed a mind constantly at work. He had been on leave, visiting his younger sister, Lily, when the attack began. Now, he was racing through the streets, dodging debris and panicked civilians, his only goal to reach the military base on the outskirts of the city. He had to regroup, to organize a defense. But as he ran, he couldn't shake the image of Lily's terrified face as he left her behind. The aliens moved with terrifying efficiency. Their soldiers, towering figures clad in sleek, silver armor, emerged from the ships, their movements synchronized and precise. They wielded weapons that fired bursts of energy, disintegrating anything in their path. But what struck Elena most was their strategy. They weren't indiscriminately killing, they were targeting specific individuals, women. She watched in horror as they stormed buildings, dragging women into their ships, their screams echoing through the streets. Elena's apartment door burst open, and she spun around, her heart pounding. 2 alien soldiers stood in the doorway, their faceless helmets scanning the room. She froze, her mind racing. But before they could take a step, a loud crash came from the hallway. Marcus appeared, his combat knife in hand, and lunged at the nearest soldier. The fight was brutal and swift. Marcus's training and strength were no match for the aliens' advanced weaponry, but he managed to disable one before the other retreated, dragging its fallen comrade with it. Breathing heavily, Marcus turned to Elena. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gruff but laced with concern. She nodded, still in shock. "We need to move. Now." He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. Elena hesitated, glancing back at her laptop. "Wait. My research, it could help us understand them." Marcus frowned but nodded, allowing her to grab the device before they fled into the chaos outside. As they navigated the crumbling streets, Elena explained what she had observed. "They're not just capturing women randomly. They're targeting specific genetic markers. I think they're trying to harvest us." Marcus's jaw tightened. "For what? Experiments? Slaves?" Elena shook her head. "I don't know. But if we can figure out their technology, maybe we can stop them." Their journey was fraught with danger. Alien patrols roamed the streets, and the city's infrastructure was collapsing. Fires raged, and the air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning metal. Along the way, they encountered other survivors, men, mostly, who had been left behind. Some joined them, forming a small, desperate band. But the absence of women was palpable, a grim reminder of the aliens' sinister agenda. By the time they reached the military base, it was clear that humanity was losing the war. The base was in shambles, its defenses obliterated. The few remaining soldiers were in disarray, their morale shattered. Marcus took charge, barking orders and rallying the troops. Elena worked alongside the engineers, using her knowledge to hack into captured alien devices. But progress was slow, and the aliens' grip on the planet tightened with each passing hour. As night fell, Elena sat alone in a makeshift lab, staring at a holographic projection of the alien ships. Their patterns were intricate, almost beautiful, but they held a dark secret. She felt a surge of determination. They had to fight back, not just for themselves, but for the women who had been taken. For Lily. For all of humanity. Marcus found her there, his expression grim. "We've lost contact with the other bases. It's just us now." Elena looked up, her eyes blazing with resolve. "Then we'll make our stand here. We'll find a way to hurt them, to make them regret ever coming here." Marcus nodded, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "We'll need a plan." and we'll need to move fast. The section ends with Elena and Marcus standing side by side, their bond forged in the crucible of war. The city burns around them, and the alien ships loom overhead, but in that moment, they are united by a single purpose: to fight back, no matter the cost. The stage is set for the next phase of the conflict, and the reader is left eager to see how humanity will turn the tide. The makeshift lab hummed with tension, the air thick with the acrid scent of burnt circuitry and desperation. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard, her eyes darting between the holographic projections of alien schematics and the fragmented data streams she had managed to decrypt. The alien device they had salvaged from the streets of New York pulsed faintly on the table, its surface etched with the same glowing runes that adorned their ships. It was a piece of the puzzle, but Elena knew it wasn't enough. Not yet. Marcus stood nearby, his arms crossed over his chest, his gaze fixed on the device. His uniform was torn and streaked with ash, but his posture was rigid, his mind sharp. He had spent the last few hours organizing what remained of the military forces, rallying the survivors into a semblance of order. But the weight of their situation pressed heavily on him. The aliens were relentless, their technology far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. And yet, as he watched Elena work, he felt a flicker of hope. If anyone could crack the aliens' secrets, it was her. "We're running out of time," Marcus said, his voice low but urgent. "They're closing in on the base. We need something, anything, that can give us an edge." Elena didn't look up. "I know. But this isn't like reverse engineering human tech. Their systems are alive, in a way. They adapt, they resist. It's like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands." Marcus frowned, stepping closer. "What do you mean, alive?" She paused, finally meeting his gaze. "Their technology is organic, integrated with their biology. It's not just machines, it's an extension of them. That's why our weapons barely scratch their armor. They're not just wearing it, they're part of it." Marcus's jaw tightened. "So how do we fight something like that?" Elena turned back to the hologram, her expression hardening. "We find a way to disrupt that connection. If we can sever their control over their tech, even for a moment, we might stand a chance." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Outside, the distant rumble of alien ships echoed through the night, a constant reminder of the enemy's presence. Marcus clenched his fists, his mind racing. They needed a plan, and they needed it now. "What do you need from me?" he asked, his voice steady. Elena hesitated, then nodded toward the device. "I need more of these. Intact. And I need time." Marcus didn't hesitate. "You'll have it." He turned on his heel and strode out of the lab, barking orders as he went. Within minutes, a team of soldiers was assembled, their faces grim but determined. They knew the risks, but they also knew what was at stake. As the team prepared to move out, Marcus pulled aside a young private, barely out of his teens. "Stay here," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Protect Dr. Vasquez. If anything happens to her, we're done." The private nodded, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." The mission was a blur of chaos and adrenaline. The streets were a war zone, littered with debris and the remnants of humanity's failed resistance. Alien patrols were everywhere, their movements precise and unyielding. But Marcus and his team moved like shadows, using the ruins to their advantage. They struck quickly and quietly, targeting isolated soldiers and scavenging their devices. It was dangerous work, and not everyone made it back. But by the time they returned to the base, they had what Elena needed. She worked through the night, her focus unshakable. The lab became a hive of activity, engineers and scientists scrambling to assist her as she pieced together the alien technology. Marcus stayed by her side, his presence a steady anchor amidst the storm. He didn't understand the intricacies of her work, but he didn't need to. He trusted her, and that was enough. As dawn broke, Elena finally leaned back in her chair, her eyes bloodshot but alight with triumph. "I've got it," she said, her voice hoarse but steady. "I found a way to disrupt their systems. It's not perfect, but it'll give us a fighting chance." Marcus felt a surge of relief, but it was short-lived. "How long will it last?" "A few minutes, maybe less. But it should be enough to take down their shields and disable their weapons. After that, it's up to you." He nodded, his mind already racing through the implications. "We'll hit them hard and fast. No hesitation." Elena stood, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "There's something else. Their ships, they're not just vehicles. They're connected to a central network, a hive mind of sorts. If we can disrupt that, we might be able to cripple their entire fleet. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Can you do it? She hesitated, then nodded. I think so. But it'll require getting close to one of their command ships. Too close. He didn't flinch. Then that's what we'll do. The plan was set in motion with ruthless efficiency. The remaining forces were mobilized, their spirits bolstered by the promise of a counterattack. Elena's device was replicated and distributed, its activation synchronized to maximize the disruption. Marcus led the charge, his resolve unshakable. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew they had no other choice. As the battle raged, Elena found herself in the heart of the storm. She had insisted on being there, despite Marcus's protests. This was her fight as much as his, and she wouldn't hide while others risked their lives. The command ship loomed overhead, its massive form casting a shadow over the battlefield. She could feel the hum of its energy, a palpable force that made her skin crawl. With Marcus at her side, she activated the device, its pulse rippling through the air like a shockwave. The effect was immediate. The alien ships faltered, their shields flickering and failing. The soldiers on the ground seized the opportunity, their attacks finally finding their mark. But the command ship remained, its defenses weakened but not destroyed. Elena's hands trembled as she adjusted the device, her focus narrowing to a single point. This is it, she whispered. One shot. Marcus gripped her shoulder, his touch grounding her. Do it. She took a deep breath and pressed the final command. The device surged, its energy lancing upward and striking the command ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening roar, the ship's systems overloaded, its hull buckling under the strain. The explosion lit up the sky, a blinding flash that sent shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. As the dust settled, a cheer rose from the survivors. But Elena and Marcus knew the fight wasn't over. The aliens were wounded, but not defeated. And as the sun rose over the shattered city, they stood together, ready to face whatever came next. The tide had turned, but the war was far from won. The aftermath of the command ship's destruction was a strange mix of triumph and unease. The alien fleet, once an unstoppable force, now drifted in disarray, their formations broken and their movements erratic. The battlefield below was littered with the remnants of their technology, glowing faintly as if mourning their fallen masters. But amidst the wreckage, humanity's survivors stood tall, their spirits buoyed by the first real victory they had achieved since the invasion began. Elena stood at the edge of the base's makeshift command center, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as she stared at the horizon. The explosion had left her ears ringing and her mind reeling, but she couldn't afford to rest. Not yet. The device she had created was a temporary solution, a spark of hope in a war that was far from over. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, a constant reminder that the fate of humanity rested on her shoulders. Marcus approached her, his footsteps heavy but deliberate. His uniform was singed, and a fresh cut marred his cheek, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. We did it, he said, his voice low but filled with a quiet intensity. But they're not done. They'll regroup, and when they do, they'll come back harder. Elena nodded, her gaze still fixed on the horizon. I know. We bought ourselves some time, but we need more than that. We need to understand them, their motives, their weaknesses. If we can't predict their next move, we're just delaying the inevitable. Marcus studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. You think you can figure them out? She turned to face him, her eyes blazing with determination. I have to. There's something about their technology, their biology, that we're missing. If I can just get closer, if I can see how they operate up close. He didn't like where this was going. Elena, it's too dangerous. You've already done more than anyone could ask of you. Let the soldiers handle the rest. She shook her head, her resolve unshakable. This isn't just about fighting them, Marcus. It's about understanding them. If we can't do that, we'll never win. And I'm the only one who can. He wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but he knew she wasn't. She was their best chance, maybe their only chance. And so, against his better judgment, he nodded. All right. But you're not going alone. The decision was made, and the plan was set in motion. A small team was assembled, their mission clear: infiltrate one of the alien ships, gather intelligence, and return before the enemy could regroup. It was a desperate gamble, but they were out of options. The journey to the ship was fraught with danger. The aliens, though disoriented, were far from defenseless. Their patrols were fewer, but no less deadly, and the team had to move with precision and stealth. Elena stayed close to Marcus, her heart pounding in her chest as they navigated the ruins of the city. The alien ship loomed ahead, its massive form casting a shadow over the landscape. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, its surface alive with pulsating light and shifting patterns. As they approached, Marcus signaled for the team to halt. "This is it," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's energy. "Stay close, and don't take any unnecessary risks." Elena nodded, her grip tightening on the device she had brought with her. It was a modified version of the one she had used to disrupt the command ship, but this time, its purpose was different. This time, it was a key. The infiltration was a blur of tension and adrenaline. The ship's interior was a labyrinth of twisting corridors and alien machinery, its walls lined with glowing runes that seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. Elena's device guided them, its interface translating the alien symbols into something she could understand. But the deeper they went, the more she realized how little she truly knew. They reached the heart of the ship, a massive chamber filled with a swirling vortex of light and energy. At its center was a structure unlike anything Elena had ever seen, a living, breathing core that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. She felt a surge of awe and terror as she approached it, her mind racing with possibilities. "This is it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This is their control center. If I can interface with it, I might be able to access their network, their hive mind." Marcus's hand tightened on her arm. "Elena, this is too dangerous. We don't know what it'll do to you." She met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "I have to try. If I don't, we'll never understand them. And if we don't understand them, we'll never beat them." He hesitated, then nodded, his grip loosening. "Do it. But if anything goes wrong, I'm pulling you out." She stepped forward, her hands trembling as she connected the device to the core. The moment it activated, she felt a surge of energy course through her, a flood of information and sensations that threatened to overwhelm her. She saw flashes of the aliens' history, their culture, their motives. She felt their fear, their desperation, their regret. And then, she saw it, the key to their downfall. The connection severed abruptly, and Elena stumbled back, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Marcus caught her, his arm steadying her as she struggled to regain her composure. "What did you see?" he asked, his voice urgent. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with realization. "They're not what we thought. They're not conquerors, they're refugees. Their world was dying, and they came here looking for a new home. But they didn't understand us. They saw us as a threat, something to be controlled. And now they regret it." Marcus frowned, his mind racing. "If that's true, then maybe we don't have to destroy them. Maybe we can find another way." Elena nodded, her resolve hardening. "We have to try. But first, we need to get out of here." The escape was a blur of chaos and adrenaline. The ship, now aware of their presence, began to collapse around them, its systems failing as the core destabilized. They barely made it out alive, the ship exploding in a blinding flash of light as they reached the safety of the ruins. As they regrouped with the others, Elena felt a surge of hope. They had the key to ending the war, but it wouldn't be easy. The aliens were still a threat, but now, they had a chance to understand, to negotiate, to find a way forward. Marcus stood beside her, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "What now?" he asked, his voice steady. Elena took a deep breath, her mind already racing with possibilities. "Now, we show them we're not the enemy. And we make them see that they don't have to be ours." The war was far from over, but for the first time, they had a path to victory. And as the sun rose over the shattered city, they stood together, ready to face whatever came next. The dawn broke over the ruins of the city, its pale light casting long shadows across the jagged remnants of skyscrapers and the smoldering wreckage of alien ships. Elena stood at the edge of the makeshift camp, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as she stared at the horizon. The weight of what she had learned in the alien ship pressed heavily on her mind, a tangled web of revelations and unanswered questions. The aliens were not the mindless conquerors they had seemed, they were desperate, driven by fear and survival. But understanding their motives didn't erase the atrocities they had committed. It only made the path forward more complicated. Marcus approached her, his boots crunching against the debris-strewn ground. His face was etched with exhaustion, but his eyes were sharp, focused. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low but firm. "The others are getting restless. They want to know what we're planning next." Elena turned to him, her expression a mix of determination and uncertainty. "I know. And they deserve answers. But this isn't just about fighting anymore. It's about finding a way to end this without more bloodshed. Marcus frowned, his jaw tightening. You're talking about negotiating with them. After everything they've done. I'm talking about giving them a choice, she replied, her voice steady. They're not monsters, Marcus. They're scared, just like us. If we can show them that we're not a threat, that we can coexist, maybe we can end this without more destruction. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze searching hers. And if they don't want to coexist? If they see this as weakness and attack? Then we fight, she said without hesitation. But we have to try. If we don't, we're no better than they are. Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. You're asking a lot. Not just of me, but of everyone here. They've lost everything. Their families, their homes. They're not going to be quick to forgive. I know, Elena said softly. But if we don't try, we'll never know if it could have worked. And we'll be condemning ourselves to an endless war. He nodded slowly, his expression grim but resolute. All right. We'll try it your way. But if this goes south, we need to be ready to fight. The plan was set in motion with cautious precision. Elena worked tirelessly to modify the device she had used in the alien ship, transforming it from a weapon into a tool for communication. It was a delicate process, requiring her to tap into the alien network without triggering their defenses. Marcus, meanwhile, prepared the survivors for the possibility of both peace and war. It was a difficult balance, but one they had no choice but to strike. When the time came, Elena stood at the center of the camp, the device in her hands. Around her, the survivors watched with a mix of hope and skepticism. Marcus stood at her side, his presence a silent reminder of the stakes. This is it, she said, her voice carrying over the hushed crowd. We're going to reach out to them. To show them that we're not their enemies. But if this doesn't work, we'll be ready to defend ourselves. No matter what happens, we face it together. She activated the device, its pulse rippling through the air like a beacon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the sky above them shimmered, and an alien ship descended, its massive form casting a shadow over the camp. The survivors tensed, their hands gripping weapons tightly, but Elena held up a hand, her gaze fixed on the ship. A figure emerged, its silver armor gleaming in the sunlight. It was taller than the soldiers they had faced before, its movements deliberate and measured. Elena stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. We don't want to fight, she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. We want to understand. We want to find a way to end this without more bloodshed. The alien tilted its head, its faceless helmet studying her. Then, to her astonishment, it spoke, its voice a deep, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through the air. You are not like the others, it said. You seek understanding, not destruction. Elena felt a surge of hope. We do. We know why you came here. We know your world was dying. But this doesn't have to be the way. We can help each other. The alien was silent for a long moment, its gaze shifting to the survivors behind her. Then, it nodded. We will consider your offer. But know this, if you betray us, there will be no mercy. Before Elena could respond, the alien turned and retreated to its ship, which ascended into the sky with a deafening roar. The camp erupted into murmurs, the survivors grappling with what had just happened. Marcus stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Well, he said, his voice dry. That went better than expected. Elena let out a shaky laugh, her legs trembling beneath her. It's a start. But we're not out of the woods yet. Over the next few days, tensions remained high. The aliens kept their distance, but their presence was a constant reminder of the fragile truce. Elena worked tirelessly to establish a line of communication, her efforts fueled by a desperate hope that they could find common ground. Marcus, meanwhile, kept the survivors focused, his leadership a steadying force in the face of uncertainty. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the alien ship returned. This time, the figure that emerged was different, its armor less ornate, its movements less imposing. It carried a device similar to Elena's, and when it spoke, its voice was softer, almost hesitant. We have considered your offer, it said. And we are willing to negotiate. Elena felt a surge of relief, but she knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but for the first time, there was hope. As she stepped forward to meet the alien, Marcus at her side, she felt a sense of purpose she hadn't known since the invasion began. The war wasn't over, but it had changed. And as the two sides stood face to face, the possibility of peace hung in the air, fragile but undeniable. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it was theirs to shape.